Hey folks, welcome to Phantoms and Monsters Radio. Now, there are encounters that happen in the deep woods, far from homes and highways. Those are unsettling enough, but tonight's reports are somewhat different. These are cases where something came closer. Parking lots, cabins, bedrooms, backyards, public parks, open water. Even hospital wards. Across decades and across states, the details change, but the pattern remains. Now, something intersects human lives briefly, deliberately, and then vanishes. And in several of these accounts, the witnesses are left with that same question, were they meant to see it all? Now, tonight we examined several cases. No embellishment, no exaggeration, just what was reported. And between each, we'll look at what connects them. So let's begin. Now, at approximately 1:30 a.m., a witness stated that he had been standing at his apartment window on the 4th floor of the residential building at Attleboro, Massachusetts. He was smoking a cigarette when he noticed a dark blue Hyundai pulled into the parking lot below. Now, the vehicle came to a stop. A young man exited the car. Now, according to the witness, the subject was wearing a white winter jacket. What happened next stunned him. The man immediately dropped to all fours. The witness emphasized that he did not observe a gradual transformation. There was no visible morphing of limbs or grotesque distortion. Instead, he described an instantaneous unnatural contortion into a quadrupedal stance resembling a canine's. The posture shift appeared physically impossible for a normal human body. Now, once on all fours, the subject accelerated rapidly across the snowy ground. The speed was described as far beyond what the witness believed a human could achieve in that position. The figure ran directly toward a 6-foot-tall fence bordering the property. Now, without hesitation, the subject leaped cleanly over the fence and dove headfirst into a massive snowbank on the opposite side. Then the figure vanished from view. The entire incident lasted approximately 30 seconds. Now, at 1:54 a.m., Now, this just happened a couple of weeks ago. While I was listening to Coast AM, I received a frantic phone call from the witness. He was literally screaming into the phone, repeating, "What the hell? What did I just see?" It took several minutes to calm him down enough to obtain a coherent narrative. He expressed fear of contacting the police, concerned that he would have been ridiculed or dismissed. So once composed, he carefully detailed the posture change, the quadruple sprint, and the effortless fence leap. He insisted that what he saw was not a prank, not a drunk individual, and not someone simply climbing or vaulting in a conventional way. The movement pattern was described as distinctly animalistic. Now, he later told me that after the event, he searched online for werewolf sightings, and my name appeared in the results. Now, the next morning, the witness contacted me and stated that the car was gone. Now, the space where the car was parked was empty. The snow remained because the parking lot had not been plowed after that huge storm the week prior, which was the big nor'easter up here in the Northeast. There were no tread marks, as if nothing had ever been there. The witness is more fearful now, worried he witnessed something he wasn't supposed to see. Now, this Attleboro incident introduces a recurring behavioral anomaly: instantaneous posture alteration without transitional movement. Now, across multiple upright canine and alleged shapeshifter cases, witnesses describe a sudden quadrupedal stance without visible anatomical distortion. The emphasis is not on transformation, but on mechanical repositioning. Snow details are also important. No tread marks, no departure tracks. In winter encounters, the absence of a trace often becomes of significance as presence. So from a parking lot in Massachusetts, we move west to a remote Colorado cabin. This next case shifts from physical agility to psychological manipulation. Now, the witness tells me this happened in late 2017 near Winter Park, Colorado, at a family friend's cabin. The property sits in a remote area with very few homes nearby. We spent a day sledding and returned to the cabin in the early evening. Now, my parents and their friends were downstairs playing board games. My siblings and a couple of other friends were upstairs. At some point, my mom realized my younger sister was not with the other kids. She was told that my sister had gone into her room to listen to music, which was not unusual. About an hour passed. My mom had not seen or heard from her, and that was strange because my sister would never willingly miss out on time with her friends. My mom checked the bedroom, and she wasn't there. That's when the panic set in. Everyone began searching for throughout the cabin, every room, every closet, every corner, no sign of her. Nearly 2 hours had passed since anyone had seen her. My mom went outside hoping she had wandered out onto the property. What she found terrified her. My sister was inside our car with her face pressed flat against the window. Her eyes were wide and filled with fear. She was screaming, but my mom said it looked almost mechanical, like something out of a horror movie. The doors were locked. No one understood how she got in there or why she could not unlock the door. When my mom opened the car and pulled her out, she was not responding normally. She appeared to be in a trance. She did not answer any questions. She did not react to being shaken. It was as if she were somewhere else mentally. They brought her inside. For 1 to 2 hours, she remained withdrawn and unresponsive. Eventually, my mother put her to bed. Now, the next morning, she seemed calmer but shaken. When asked how she ended up in the car, she said she did not remember. The only thing she recalled was seeing a man dressed completely in black approach the vehicle while she was trapped inside. She said she was terrified and tried to get out. The man got closer and told her he would let her out, but she had to do something for him. He held a black rose up to the window and told her to come out so he could give it to her. After that, she remembered nothing. Now, later, my mom went back outside to examine the area. She found a trail of footprints leading away from the vehicle and into the surrounding forest. No one in our group had been walking in that area. No one could explain the tracks. To this day, we have no explanation, but my mother says the expression on my sister's face in that car was something that she'll never forget. Now, child-focused encounters involving black-clad figures are historically consistent across folkloric and modern anomalous reports. The black rose detail is unusual, suggesting symbolic manipulation rather than brute force. Footprints leading into forest terrain with no identified owner align with several proximity cases in mountain regions. And Winter Park has prior unexplained events dating way back, often and many decades ago, actually. So from Colorado forest, we shift to Utah, where the term skinwalker carries far older weight. Now, the witness states, I'm about to tell you something that's absolutely true. My grandfather lived in Mighton, Utah. Now, when I was young, he would tell me stories about skinwalkers and how they would take the form of an animal or even someone you knew. One day, I finally asked him if he had ever met one. He told me yes. I asked him when. He said it was a very long time ago, before I was born, before my mother was born. He said he was young and foolish and had gone out to what he called Skinwalker Valley. Now, according to him, it was a place where nothing living entered. Not even crows would go there. He said even the guardians of death feared whatever lived in that valley. He told me that he had driven out there in his old red Ford truck to prove to everyone that the stories were nothing but superstition. He wanted to show people that the valley was empty and harmless, but he was wrong. When he arrived, he said the grass was black, as if it had been burnt and somehow survived. The trees looked dead, but were still standing, still alive in some unnatural way. He saw an old house not far from where he parked. The roof had caved in. The door was missing. Strange marks were carved or gouged into the side. Animal skeletons were scattered across the property as if they were burial ground. Then he heard her. He heard his grandmother's voice calling him. She had died years before. She said the spirits were calling for him, for his life, for his skin, for his blood, and for his soul. He believed they were lost souls that could change form from man to beast. He said they chased him, they frightened him, and before he escaped, they told him they would never forget him. Now, after that, things began happening at his home. Whenever I visited, he would show me something brand new that had been broken the very next day. His animals were killed. Eventually, he stopped keeping his dogs outside because they wouldn't survive the night. He insisted that the spirits in the valley were responsible. Now, as I grew older, I lost patience. I told him his stories were lies. I demanded proof. He didn't argue. He simply turned around and lifted his shirt. I gasped. His back was covered in scars. There was not one single clear patch of skin. Wide claw marks crossed him in multiple directions. They were too straight and too far apart to be made by a human hand. I started to cry. My mother ran into the room to see what was wrong. When she saw his back, she screamed at him while holding me. He said nothing. He just stood there staring out into the field across the road from the house. Now, as my mother carried me inside, I looked over her shoulder and saw it. A large black dog stood in the field. His eyes were white. It was staring at my grandfather, and he was staring back at it as if he was waiting for it to attack. It never moved toward him. It just simply watched. I never saw that dog again. My grandfather died 2 months later. The doctor said his heart had just given out. I never believed that explanation. His arm had fresh claw marks when he died. That was 42 years ago. No one has ever believed me, but it happened. So I'm telling it now. Never look into a skinwalker's eyes. It will not forget you. Sooner or later, it will come for you. You can fight it. You can refuse it. But if you do, you had better not be afraid to die. Now, this account blends traditional Navajo shapeshifter lore with physical scarring and animal manifestations. Now, wide, straight claw marks described as too far apart for human origin appear in multiple alleged large canines or bipedal predator reports. The recurring black dog with white eyes mirrors regional death hound traditions in both native and European folklore. But before we continue, if you're enjoying tonight's presentation and want to hear more stories like this, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to Phantoms and Monsters Radio. It really helps us reach out to more people who are searching for answers about the unexplained. And make sure to click the notification bell so you won't miss any of our live shows. Now, not every intrusion announces itself with claws. Some come quietly with suits and statements. I was contacted by another investigator about the following incident. The witness, whom I will identify as H.O., first reached out after reading a discussion on whether it was wise to confront men in black if encountered. He strongly advised against it. Now, according to H.O., his encounters followed an earlier unexplained incident that he chose not to detail. Several months later, 2 individuals appeared at his rural home. The property was secured with a gate and a camera system. Despite these measures, the men somehow managed to access the front door undetected. Now, when H.O. opened the door, the first words were direct and accusant. He was told he had not seen what he thought he had. There was no introduction, no explanation. The tone was not conversational. It was declarative. H.O. reacted with anger and ordered them off his property. The men offered no response. They turned in unison and walked slowly down the driveway. So 3 weeks later, while driving approximately 65 miles per hour along a long straight stretch of highway in another state, a vehicle approached and matched his speed. When he glanced to his side, he noticed the passenger as one of the same men. The passenger stared at him without expression. H.O. accelerated to approximately 80 miles an hour. The vehicle remained alongside him. He then abruptly braked, and the other vehicle continued forward without hesitation. H.O. interpreted the encounter as a message. They could find him wherever they wished. For roughly a month afterward, activity ceased. Then a new pattern emerged. On multiple nights, every few weeks, his exterior security lights would activate several times. Cameras recorded only minimal motion just beyond the illuminated perimeter. The disturbances persisted for approximately 6 months. So one night, his 10-year-old dog reacted strongly, growling at the door, moving to the window, then retreating and whimpering near H.O. Shortly afterward, the neighboring ranch hands approached him. One of their cattle had disappeared during calving season. They searched the surrounding area for 3 days without finding any remains or sign of predation. Now, when H.O. mentioned the unusual activity around his home, he was surprised by the reaction. They acknowledged seeing unexplained lights in the nearby forest and canyon on multiple occasions. Now, although H.O. loved his home and property, the accumulative activity convinced him to leave. He sold his house, liquidated most of his belongings, and relocated to Southeast Asia. He reports that he now lives peacefully in a condominium in a major city. Now, the Men in Black motif consistently features access bypassing physical security systems. They synchronize movement, declarative speech, follow-up intimidation were classic behavioral markers. The cattle disappearance and unexplained lights in adjacent woodland introduce overlap between the suppression narratives and the livestock anomalies. Now, from rural surveillance to semi-translucent humanoid moving through the field. Now, this next witness stated that he and his partner were inside their home watching a movie when they heard unusual noises from the front porch. Their dog, along with their neighbors, began barking aggressively and continuously. Concerned, he ran outside to investigate. The front motion light had been triggered. Now, as he stepped into the yard, he saw something moving rapidly into the darkness beyond the reach of the light. The dogs were in pursuit, chasing whatever had triggered the disturbance. He called to his partner to bring flashlights and headed in the directions the dogs had run. Then, without warning, all the dogs stopped barking at once. The sudden silence was described as unnerving. There were no visible signs of animals and no sound of movement. The couple moved towards their nearest neighbor's property, approximately 50 feet from the fence line. Now, at that moment, a tall, slender humanoid figure suddenly ran across the field of view, emerging from the trees on the left side and disappearing behind the barn to the right. The movement was extremely fast. The witness immediately asked his partner to describe what he had seen, seeking validation. He observed a tall figure estimated at 7 to 8 feet. Both described this entity as semi-translucent. They could discern that what appeared to be an internal skeletal structure while still seeing the overall outline of its form. It seemed to be wearing a type of suit, though no facial features were distinguishable. The witness noticed that the figure reminded him of the internet folklore character known as Slender Man, although he emphasized that what they observed felt physically present and real. Now, both witnesses were shaken by the event. They did not sleep that night. At sunrise, they walked to the property to reassess the scene in daylight. The witness reported finding long stride prints in the ground and photographed them. He noted the stride length was unusual, reinforcing his belief that the encounter was genuine. Now, the witness added that this was not the first anomalous experience. Over the previous several years, he had been involved in multiple unexplained events, often without additional witnesses present. He believed humanity is not alone, either in the universe or on this planet, and desired eventual direct communication. Now, semi-translucent figures revealing internal skeleton structures fall within some of the categories as cloaked entities or Glimmerman reports. Long stride ground impressions following high-speed movement strengthens the physical claim. Wildlife misidentifications explanations struggle when multiple witnesses simultaneously report translucency and visible skeletal outlines. Now we shift from terrestrial terrain to something far less confined. The witness states that the encounter occurred while spending the summer in Missouri with extended family, including a grandmother, aunt, uncle, and cousins. He had fallen asleep in his cousin's bedroom when suddenly sensed something at the window. Upon opening his eyes, he saw what appeared to be recently deceased maternal grandmother standing there. She appeared translucent, visibly haggard, and disheveled. Her demeanor felt negative or disturbing. Without speaking, she floated out of the room. The witness followed her down the hallway in what he described as a trance-like state. Now, at the end of the hallway stood a second entity. He described it as resembling the fictional character Roger from the animated series American Dad, but with solid black eyes. The being was shorter than the witness. He was approximately 5 feet 6 inches at the time and had a grayish tan coloration. The entity exited through the door. Still in a trance, the witness followed it outside. Hovering roughly 50 feet above the ground was a large dish-shaped craft. The farmhouse had neighbors nearby, making the presence of such a massive object seem implausible. The craft was purple with an ornate gold trim. The witness distinctly recalls being surprised by how decorative and elaborate it appeared. Now, he doesn't remember boarding the craft. His next memory finds him in a rectangular room lit in purple light. The walls were paneled and emitted a glow similar to a black light. Present in the room were his aunt and both cousins. All appeared to be standing calmly. One cousin reported being abducted by aliens. The aunt pulled the witness aside and insisted that the beings were angels. Soon after, he observed his uncle positioned on a tilted examination table. 3 taller, thinner, tan-colored beings were working on him. The witness could not see the details clearly from that distance. His next memory shifts again. He lies flat on his back looking up at 3 beings. Their facial features are obscured by intense light, but the heads are rounded and smooth, resembling a mask or featureless dome. The brightness prevented clear identification. The final memory is waking up in the bed again. However, the bed itself had been moved across the room and placed against the window. He was still in it. Now, this case contains layered phenomena: apparition, mimicry, trance induction, a structured craft interior, and dual species present. Now, the decorative purple craft contradicts the standard sterile metallic abduction narrative. The inclusion of both smaller gray beings and taller Nordic types matches long-standing abductee typologies dating back to the 1950s. So now we move back to Pennsylvania. 2 witnesses, 1 park, similar descriptions. In July 2015, 2 separate witnesses came forward with disturbing accounts of a large, hairy humanoid encountered inside the McDade Park in Scranton, Pennsylvania. Now, one was a veteran police officer on patrol. The other, a local resident, claims he was physically attacked. Their stories share overlapping details and both point to the same stretch of wooded terrain near the creek and tunnel system. What exactly was moving through that park at night, and why did the 2 unrelated witnesses describe similar behavior? Now, the first witness report was from the Scranton police officer. In July 2015, a Scranton police officer with 8 years of service reported a close encounter while conducting routine nighttime patrol in McDade Park. The officer requested anonymity due to concerns about professional repercussions. Now, according to his statement, he was driving through the park late at night to ensure the area was secure. And as he passed near the pool area, he noticed what appeared to be a very dark object leaning over the edge of the road. Initially, it did not appear unusual. Now, as his vehicle passed extremely close to the figure, he realized it was not an object at all. He described seeing a large, well-muscled, hairy leg and thick, hairy waist and hand. A thick, hairy wrist and hand. The figure turned as he drove by. The officer stated that he reacted instinctively, shouting in shock, grabbing his cell phone to attempt a photograph, and drawing his service weapon. He stopped the vehicle and prepared to engage if necessary. He described himself as combat-trained and fully prepared to defend himself, but he hesitated because he wanted to see the entire figure clearly. He stated that the creature was either an unusually large monkey or what many have called a Bigfoot. He also emphasized that he would not go public due to the risk of his career. Now, he did provide a photograph to me, but it was absolutely indiscernible, showing only a dark, blurry mass with no identifiable details. So the second witness, he stated shortly after the officer's encounter surfaced, a Scranton resident named Jose Ruiz contacted with his own claim. Ruiz stated that he and his friends entered McDade Park around 8 p.m. one evening and walked along a trail leading to a small tunnel near a creek. While near the water, they reported hearing loud vocalizations described as woo or similar howling sounds. Ruiz and his friend reacted with confusion. Moments later, he claimed a large creature emerged and attacked him. His friend fled. Ruiz stated he grabbed a stick to defend himself, and when he attempted to strike the creature, it retreated toward the tunnel. Now, he later shared an image of a significant bruise, which he attributes to the encounter, and it was a large bruise. Ruiz stated that he and his friend have avoided the park at night since the incident. He also claimed that other individuals running in the park had reported hearing strange noises in recent weeks. Now, law enforcement witnesses carry a unique credibility weight due to training and exposure to high-stress scenarios. Large primate-like descriptions, howling vocalizations, and tunnel retreat behavior match regional Bigfoot pattern clusters recorded in northeastern states since the 1970s. So was it a Bigfoot? We don't know. Now, from wooded parks to open water. Now, this incident occurred during a planned 12-hour test cruise aboard a 41-foot sailboat on Chesapeake Bay. There were approximately 7 to 8 men on board, all professionals, many with technical or maritime backgrounds. Weather predictions resources in the mid-1980s were far less reliable than they are today, and the crew was caught off guard when a tropical system intensified rapidly. Winds began gusting into a 50-mile-an-hour range, bordering on a weak hurricane force. One experienced sailor on board sensed the severity of the approaching storm just in time, prompting the crew to rig storm hawsers and storm sails. Now, according to the witness, without that decision, they likely would not have survived, or at least capsized. Now, at the height of the storm, visibility dropped to nearly zero. The witness fully expected to die. The security call was made over the marine radio, a navigational safety broadcast warning near vessels of dangerous conditions. For approximately 15 minutes, the boat was caught in what he described as a maelstrom. Then, as suddenly as it began, the worst of it passed by. Now, approximately 3 p.m., although heavy cloud cover remained, visibility had improved to roughly 2 miles. The bay was still churning, foaming, and confused, the term old sailors used to use when wave patterns became chaotic and unpredictable. Now, while the crew worked on deck securing lines and assessing damage, the witness noticed movement about 15 feet off the starboard side. Something swam upward through the agitated water and broke the surface. He described the entity as resembling a thin man with articulated arms like a human. The head was distinctly humanoid, but the skin appeared scaled like a snake's. The creature surfaced, looked directly toward the boat, blinked with a heavy-lidded eyes, and then submerged again. The sighting only lasted seconds. Now, at the time, the witness was sober, uninjured, and mentally sharp. He had approximately 6 years of experience aboard boats and fishing vessels and encountered marine life ranging from squid to octopus to sharks and flying fish in multiple regions of the world. He was not prone to misidentifying seaweed or debris as living creatures. He initially chose not to speak. The crew consisted of mechanics, engineers, and career Navy professionals. Raising the possibility of having seen a humanoid sea creature could damage reputations, particularly as some crew members were pursuing qualification milestones such as officer of the deck. Now, as he stood on deck in his life vest soaked and clipped into the steel lifeline, another sailor broke the silence. A United States Navy captain with more than 30 years of surface fleet experience reportedly stated that he had seen a brown thing pop up on the surface that looked like a lizard man with scaly face that blinked at them before diving. The witness then confirmed he had seen the same thing. No other crew members reported observing the entity. Now, the vessel later returned safely to the pier. The incident was never discussed again. The witness concludes by acknowledging the inherent unreliability of brief surface sightings at sea and the role perception can play during extreme stress. Now, he offers no photographs, no physical evidence, no insistence that others accept the account without question. He simply states that the experience occurred exactly as described. Now, humanoid aquatic sightings are rare but not unprecedented. Reports of lizard man or scaled humanoid figures at sea appear sporadically in maritime logs across the 20th century. The corroboration by the senior Navy captain significantly elevates the credibility threshold in this case. Extreme weather conditions can distort perception, but dual independent observation reduces simple hallucination explanations. So now we move from open water to institutional confinement. Now, in June 1992, a retired Maryland attorney identified as MB was assigned a pro bono client who had been placed by court order in the state hospital in the Baltimore metro area. MB at the time maintained multiple offices throughout the Baltimore and Washington, D.C. corridor and regularly represented individuals with mental disabilities on behalf of the state. Now, MB interviewed the client at the hospital. The man had been arrested for possession of a small vintage Marlin Derringer handgun and ammunition, which was found in his pants pocket along with minor vagrancy violations. Now, during intake, the client identified himself as Morris Winthrop. He claimed to be from New Jersey and stated that he had lived most of his life in New York City. Official records showed a Morris Winthrop had never resided in Maryland. Now, when arrested, Morris was wearing a high-collar white shirt and brown frock coat with matching pants. Now, MB later discovered that the clothing closely resembled authentic Victorian-era menswear dating from approximately 1870 to 1880. Now, among Morris's personal effects was a small silver metal case similar in size and appearance to a cigarette case. The inside was a square piece of black material that resembled hard plastic. Hospital staff allowed Morris to retain the object during his confinement. Now, physically, Morris appeared to be in his early 30s. His face was completely hairless, lacking even stubble. His eyebrows were thin, his hair wispy and blonde, and his complexion unusually pale. MB noted that Morris's eyes were deep blue, bordering on violet, and strikingly intense. Now, throughout the interview, Morris maintained direct eye contact and smiled calmly. He answered very few questions beyond stating his name, his association with New York City, and his uncertainty about how he arrived in Baltimore. A hospital physician suggested that Morris may have been suffering from shock or memory loss. Now, MB did not share that impression. He felt strongly that Morris was fully aware of his circumstances, though he could not articulate why this conviction felt so certain. At the conclusion of the interview, MB explained that Morris was being held under court order and that a hearing date would be requested. Morris responded politely, thanking MB for his service and stating, "I will contact you, I promise." The following day, the Baltimore County State's Attorney's Office informed MB that his legal services were no longer required. No explanation was offered. When MB contacted the treating physician, he was told that Morris was no longer at the facility and that any further inquiry should be directed to the state's attorney's office. For nearly 2 years, no official information regarding Morris Winthrop was available. In 1994, MB was privately approached by a hospital attendant who had worked during Morris's brief stay. The attendant reported that Morris had vanished from the ward shortly after his evening meal. A full search of the facility produced no results. Morris's clothing had been retained by the state's attorney's office, but all other personal items, including the silver metal case, were missing. The location of the firearm was never disclosed, though MB assumed it was transferred to the state police custody. Now, driven by unanswered questions, MB initiated a private investigation. A licensed investigator uncovered a single historical reference to a man named Morris Winthrop, age 32, who resided in New York City in 1877. That Morris disappeared without a trace, leaving all personal property behind. Contemporary police records from that period reported no evidence of foul play. Now, over the next 19 years, MB hired additional investigators, but no further records surfaced. The promise Morris made during their final exchange continued to weigh heavily on MB, who questioned whether his former client was something far stranger than a lost man. If Morris was a traveler displaced in time, MB wondered if that promised contact would ever occur. Now, I got this story because MB was an attorney I had hired at one point, and he told this story to me. And in fact, this account was given to Rosemary Ellen Guiley for one of her books. So, yeah, it's been a while since this happened, but I don't know what happened. I looked into it briefly, but I couldn't find any other information. Now, the Victorian clothing detail associated with the documented 1877 disappearance introduced the time displacement hypothesis. Hairless facial feature, violet eyes, unexplained disappearance under state custody echo rare temporal anomaly narratives, that recorded intermittently since the 1800s. According to some people I've talked to, this has happened before and since. So I don't know. I don't know if it happens other places other than Maryland, but apparently it does. So in this last account, we end in the Sierra Nevada mountains. The witness states that he had never been interested in UFOs or extraterrestrials and always found the subject unsettling. As a child, watching the film Signs left him deeply frightened, reinforcing his belief that such things belong strictly in science fiction. That mindset changed following an experience he had never shared publicly until now. So in the summer of 2017, he and a close friend traveled to a remote area in Northern California to camp in the Sierra Nevada mountains. Now, both men were experienced outdoorsmen. They hiked roughly 10 miles from their vehicles to an isolated clearing with a panoramic view. The location was not an established campsite, but a spot the friend had visited once before. Now, on their second night around 10 p.m., they sat by the fire eating and watching the stars. His friend eventually retired to his tent, leaving the witness alone by the fire. Approximately 45 minutes later, the witness noticed an object rising silently from the valley below. He described it as a classic flying saucer shape with multiple circular lights rotating around its perimeter. The lights continuously shift colors. He stood frozen in shock as he watched the object for roughly 15 seconds. Realizing he needed corroboration, he stood up to wake his friend. When he turned back, the object had vanished. He called out his friend's name and immediately realized something was wrong. He could not even hear his own voice. The environment had gone completely silent. He was unable to move his body, though his eyes remained mobile. The campfire appeared frozen in time, flames suspended as if it was still motion or still image. Moments later, there was a sudden flash of light, and he lost consciousness. He awoke just before sunrise, lying on the ground outside the extinguished fire, violently shivering. He felt disoriented, weak, and drugged. When he called for his friend, the man emerged confused. The witness attempted to explain what had happened, but his memory was fragmented and unclear. They packed up and left within 30 minutes. During the 7-hour drive home, the witness drifted in and out of sleep and remained largely silent. After being dropped off, he slept for nearly the entire day. Now, several weeks later, while unplugging a guitar from an amplifier, a burst of static produced a sustained, low-pitched sound. The noise triggered a sudden, vivid memory. He remembered regaining consciousness while suspended horizontally within a circular apparatus. His body was arranged in a pose similar to Leonardo da Vinci's Vitruvian Man. Transparent, glass-like restraints held him in place. He was completely nude. Standing above him were 3 small beings he described as typical grays, approximately 4 foot tall, wearing tight white suits. 2 stood observing while the third extracted blood from a vein beneath his armpit using an unfamiliar syringe. Though expressionless, the beings appeared startled that he was conscious. He could not move his body, only his eyes and lips. A surge of terror and rage flooded him. His thoughts became primal and aggressive, and he felt an overwhelming urge to attack them. He sensed that they perceived his emotional state, as all 3 stepped back simultaneously. 2 of the beings then left his field of vision, while one remained silently staring. Moments later, the 2 returned, accompanied by 2 very large human-looking figures, one male and one female. The witness described them as strikingly beautiful, with long golden hair and unusually large eyes. The male's eyes were deeply blue, and the female's were violet. He believed they matched what are commonly referred to as Nordics. The witness noticed that his own Scandinavian ancestry and physical appearance, which closely resembled those of these beings. He then perceived a feminine voice communicating directly in his mind. Though not spoken in English, the meaning was immediately understood. She told him to remain calm and assured him that he wasn't in danger. As his fear subsided, he asked why he was there. She responded that they were simply checking on him. He then heard a male voice explain that they had saved him from what he first came into being. The witness immediately connected the statement to his birth. He had been born nearly 2 months premature. His mother had suffered a severe illness during labor, and both had dangerously high fevers. Doctors were unable to identify the cause. He underwent spinal taps and spent several nights in intensive care, with a significant risk of death or permanent damage. Instead, he recovered fully without explanation. When he asked why he had been saved, the male voice said it was a conversation for another time. The witness asked whether they were human. He was told they were not. When he questioned humanity's origin, he was told that these beings arrived on Earth approximately 200,000 years ago and created modern humans by combining their DNA and that of a primate ancestor. He asked why they resembled him so closely, and response was that many males of their kind had mated with human females, passing on physical traits that became prominent in Nordic populations. Before he could ask more, he was told it was time to return. He immediately lost consciousness and awoke once again by the cold campfire, fully clothed and shivering. The witness concludes by stating that he understands how unbelievable the account sounds, but insists it occurred. Now, since the encounter, he reports feeling lost and consumed by research into human extraterrestrial connections, searching for answers he cannot escape. Now, this account merges classical abduction elements with claims of genetic intervention. Nordic physical resemblance, premature birth crisis, and telepathic messenger are consistent motifs in experiencer literature spanning decades. Emotional shift from terror to controlled communication is also frequently described. So here we had 10 cases, 10 very different environments, yet several themes repeat: rapid proximity, direct observation, behavioral intelligence, emotional manipulation, and sudden disappearance. Whether we are dealing with cryptids, shapeshifters, ultra-terrestrials, or something else entirely, the pattern suggests intentional interaction rather than random anomalies. If you live near any of these regions and have experienced something similar, I want to hear about it. Because if there's one conclusion tonight supports, it is this: whatever is out there does not always stay there. And in some of these cases, it may be watching far longer than what we have realized. Now, if you experienced anything like this or had an unexplained encounter or sighting, you can send your report to Phantoms and Monsters. And as always, thanks for listening. So, folks, you got any questions, just put them up there. Cans Quatch. Do you get many time traveler displacement reports that could be an interesting topic for future shows? I get them occasionally. I probably got enough in the archive to do a show at least, so I'll see what I can find. Dagnammit, have you heard of black-eyed kid phenomena having all whited out eyes? Yeah, I've heard white eyes and black eyes. Normally the white eyes are associated with older individuals, but I have heard both. But yeah, it does happen. Anything else? Oh, by the way, I just wanted to mention that the Glimmerman book is out. It was released on Tuesday, and it's on Amazon. So if you're interested and want to get it, you can find it there. Just search my name; it'll come up. Jose Sanchez, the blue violet-eyed being reminded me of the Nordics for some reason. Well. Yeah, I mean, I've heard that color, both colors associated with the those type of beings, the more human-like extraterrestrials or ultra-terrestrials, aliens, or whatever you want to call them. Paranormalism Net, are there any reports of humanoids changing size? Yeah, occasionally I think there have been some. Offhand, I can't remember any, but I know there have. As many as I've received, I know there had been some. Dagnammit, has the body of a cryptid ever been found? Not that I know of. But then again, if they do find a body, it's probably no longer a cryptid. It's something that's known. And they have found many bodies of animals that they thought were extinct, or even living animals that they thought were extinct and considered cryptids, but were found again. Always staring. Lon, when is the last time you talked to Nick Redford? Love to hear him on your show. I haven't talked to Nick in a long time. I don't really think he's been doing a whole lot of shows. I haven't had him on for years. As far as bringing him on the show, I don't know. I mean, the last time I tried to bring him on the show, he had some difficulty connecting. I do remember that. That's when I was doing the show with Beyond Explanation. Dagnammit, is a pale crow the same as a ghoul? Some think they are, some don't. Well, we really don't know what they are. I believe they're ultra-terrestrials like most cryptids. Ghouls, are you talking about beings that eat flesh or dig up bodies and such? I don't know. I really don't know. I mean, I've heard accounts that people state that they do believe they are, and they have seen them in their bodies, but I don't know if that's really true or not. Jose Sanchez, even the MIBs have been stated to have pale skin and weird-looking eyes as seen before, not sure. Yeah. Sometimes they do look normally human, but for the most part, there's always some weird distinction about them. And if there's multiples, they usually have the same distinctions. Can Squatch, do you think some of the reported abductions are a cover for human trafficking by government? Very well could be. It very well could be. Not Mr. Rogers. Any good Bigfoot documentaries to watch? I don't know. I watch very little TV. I don't keep up with that. The only time I keep up is if somebody asks me to be on something, or I'm involved with something, or I'm working on something that goes to TV. Oh, Uncivil Engineer. Man-Bat is a villain character of Batman, though the character is like a cryptid. Yeah, I've heard that. I've heard people mention that with winged humanoid sightings, that's what it looked like. Kim Rainham, have you ever gone to Bray Road in Delavan, Wisconsin to see the Beast of Bray Road? I have been there a couple of times years ago. I haven't been there. I haven't been up that way. Well, other than when I went to Chicago, I haven't been I haven't been in Wisconsin for over 2 decades. Anything else? Okay, well, again, I mentioned the book is up. I'll see what I can do about the next show. I'll see if I can find enough accounts to do a report. And in the meantime, and I did want to mention, and Marla knows, I forgot the date, but it's Wednesday, the 25th of March. If I'm wrong, Marla put it up there. But that Wednesday night, we're going to do a member show. And Ray Keller wants to come on too and talk about something he's involved with. So we'll try to get that stuff scheduled. But in the meantime, just stay aware, stay safe, and as always, keep looking into the unexplained. Have a great weekend. Have a good night. Take care. See you next week.